It's rather strange walking through downtown Medellin with this man. John Jairo Velasquez, alias Popeye, is not just anybody. A former lieutenant of Pablo Escobar, he's one of the few members of the Medellin cartel that's not in jail or dead. He's 55 years old and has spent more than half his life in prison. Released, he could have kept a low profile, but that's just not Popeye's style. In Colombia, Popeye is a star.
Hola, mi guerrero Randy Ventura y Emanuel Alvarado. Yo soy John Jairo Velasquez Popeye, el asesino de confianza de Pablo Escobar Gaviria, el general de la mafia. Desde las calles de Medellín, las mismas calles que pisó Pablo Escobar Gaviria, te envío todo mi cariño.
Popeye is one of the world's most ruthless hitmen.
¡Ay! ¡Hueputa! ¡Viva Pablo Escobar! Amigo.
He was the boss of Escobar's hired killers, the sicarios.
Le hacemos duro, yo le pago. Vamos a meter la política, yo le pago monstruo. Muchas gracias.
Mis respetos ante todo.
Gracias, señorita, muy amable. Gracias, bebé. Muy amable, señorita. ¿Quieres tú, bellos? ¿Qué quieres? Venga, pues. ¿La puedo abrazar, bebé? Muñeca. Yo pago la pieza.
This mafia general, as he describes himself, has confessed to having personally and cold-bloodedly murdered 250 people. He also claims to have planned at least 3,000 executions and assassination attempts. Popeye's popularity is due to television.
¿Todo bien? Pensé que no venía.
Soy la memoria histórica del cartel de Medellín.
Colombian National TV broadcasts a nightly biographical series.
Sobreviviendo Escobar, alias JJ.
The actor is Juan Pablo Riego. He's fantastic. He spent 2 weeks with me. He got to know me really well for this part.
¡Patrón! ¡Nos cayeron!
No te voy a matar de una. Te vas a desangrar como una rata.
That's the way I used to kill people. That's me killing Colombia's public prosecutor.
¿Tú lo mataste?
Yeah, I shot him in the head.
¿Y por eso ya pagaste tus
Yes, of course. That's why I can talk about it.
Y cuando te volteas sobre ese pasado y ves toda esa sangre, ¿para ti es justificado hoy en día?
Listen, you can't point a gun at someone and start thinking how his poor mother is going to cry. Oh no, what about his brothers, his neighbors, cousins? No, I just kill, and that's it.
Despite his cynicism, does he have any regrets? Not many, and certainly Popeye always finds a way to justify his actions, even rewriting history to do so.
Colombia.
You have to understand that in Colombia, the violence didn't begin one day just like that. There's a mad woman back in Spain, see? Her name's Isabella. She's the queen. And with another lunatic called Christopher Columbus, they decided to conquer America. So they could find a way to the Indies. But no one wanted to sail on their boats, because they thought Earth was flat and they'd fall off the edge. So they let the worst criminals in all of Spain out of prison, and they became the crew. Where did these boats sail? To Colombia, where they mated with the Indians. And it's from this mix of criminals and Indians that you get a fine specimen like me. It's in our blood.
We first met John Jairo Velasquez, a peculiar individual, in prison back in 2001. The next time we met was 16 years later, after he was released. He agreed to be filmed over a period of several days. So he talked about his life in sometimes shocking detail. He kept nothing back, the full confession of an assassin. He's called Popeye because when he was small, he'd wanted to become a sailor or policeman.
Yo quería estar en las armas.
Me, I wanted a job which involved weapons.
Una oportunidad de trabajo no le daban.
But I soon learned that when I went looking for a proper job,
Y lo humillaban a uno.
I'd be humiliated, kicked out of the office. People didn't even look at my CV. But if I showed up with a gun and knocked down the door, then people would become very nice. I had a friend, supposedly, a senator, who lived in my neighborhood. His name was Federico Estrada Velez. So I went over to see him, and I said, Mr. Senator, I would like to work as a policeman around here, because you can make a good living. It's good work. I was thinking there I'd be out in the street with my whistle. It'd be nice. He kicked me out of his house. He was very rude to me. I sat on a street corner with my little CV, and I actually cried. I realized the answer was having a gun. If I shot someone, I knew they'd pay attention to me. Later on, when I joined up with Pablo, I kidnapped him. With my gun to his head, I said to him, "You scum, get out of your car." And then he was very polite all of a sudden. I started off as the boss's bodyguard. Then I began getting involved in crime and killing people. I became a professional hitman. Yeah, it's a job. And there's a lot of work to go around when there's so much violence in a country like this. We killed 540 policemen. We set off 250 bombs. We killed 13 Supreme Court magistrates, 15 judges, 12 journalists. We kidnapped just about every CEO in Colombia, scared off all foreign investment. We really seriously damaged this country, at least from the point of view of normal people. To us, though, Pablo Escobar was a leader, a father, a friend, our religion.
Popeye gives the impression of still being loyal to Escobar, even now, a quarter of a century after his death.
Mi amigo, ¿qué ha hecho? ¿Cómo va? Buenas. ¿Cómo le ha ido? ¿Unas florecitas qué tiene?
Margaritas, tengo margaritas, tengo el puli que siempre le gustó, girasoles, rosas.
Ah, bueno, ¿qué tal están los girasoles? Girasolitos bien organizaditos con estos.
¿Con esta blanquita o qué?
No, con estas. Girasoles con estas.
This is where you buy flowers for the boss and take them to him out of love. This is the Montesacro Cemetery, where the boss was buried 23 years ago. Out of respect, he'll always be our boss.
Anonymous hands place fresh flowers on Pablo Escobar's tomb every day. Popeye comes 2 or 3 days a month, always varying his visits as a precaution. A cemetery guard follows him at a distance whenever he stops by.
¿Sí están armados, no?
Sí, eso es un 38.
38 largo.
When he leaves, Popeye is escorted all the way to the exit by the guard and another colleague.
They escort me because they're the security guards here. They make sure nothing happens to me in the cemetery. They're my friends. They're very kind. Thank you. May the Lord protect you. And now we're on our own again. See? No one's following us. We're clean. Now that I've left the cemetery, I'm careful. I make sure we're not being followed.
Pero por ejemplo, ahí te podían esperar.
Obviously.
Popeye, ¿usted vive amenazado hoy en día?
Those who were once my friends are my enemies now.
¿No le tienes miedo a los matones, a los sicarios?
No, I'm not scared. I used to follow so many people to kill them that I know how to shake them off. You have to avoid routines. For example, I change apartments all the time. I change cars all the time. I move around using different forms of transport. I make life difficult for them. Danger can come from almost anywhere. It's a very dangerous city. The threat can come from a motorcycle or a car, a drive-by shooting. Then there'll be 3 dead, Popeye and the TV crew. Anything can happen. It's Medellin. Look at this big drug city, Medellin. It's a beautiful city, but like a beautiful woman, she is also dangerous. She's divine, but she's built on top of a graveyard, a river of blood. Back then, the city had a population of 2 million, and Pablo Escobar had an army of 3,000 hired killers.
The sicarios, the notorious hitmen of the Medellin cartel. Getting anywhere near them was very difficult. But in 1993, we filmed them in one of Medellin's poorest districts. The area was called the Barrio Escobar, as the drug lord had built hundreds of houses here, and it had become a recruiting ground for his forces and killers.
Si no has conocido la carne, la leche, los huevos, has crecido subalimentado y te ofrecen $500,000 y te dan un revólver con salvoconducto y una moto para ir a trabajar, entre comillas, a quitarle la vida a otro, mismo te vas.
The Medellin cartel was a killing machine. I wasn't the only one. There were plenty of others. Alarete, Muro, Chopo, Tyson, Ricardo Prisco Lopera, Nemin, and others. Each of us had his specialty, and once it was decided to kill someone, that person would definitely die. El Patron had a notebook in which he wrote everything down, and he didn't mince words. He'd tell me, Popeye, this person has to die. And in no time, we'd figure out a plan. The boss's best achievement was his vast information network. They could be in a jury, journalists, universities, industry. All of them were paid every month to let him know what was happening. Once, at one of Bogota's universities, one of the professors told his students not to be scared of Escobar, but to fight him instead. Now, in Bogota, we had a group of informers and a logistical section with weapons, cars, and apartments. We were organized. The intelligence unit would be in charge of following a target. So we soon found out where the professor was sleeping, where he went grocery shopping, where his mistress lived, where he bought his fruit and bread. So we told the logistics unit we need 2 good men, motorbikes, cars, silencers. We were set. And that was Pablo Escobar's way, because he had huge amounts of money. You didn't even need to tell the boss that you'd killed someone. He'd hear it on the radio. He wouldn't hug us. It wasn't a big deal. He'd just say thank you. And we thought to ourselves, we could kill anyone around us. That was our way. That's how the mafia worked.
The mafia had an exact price on killing, a macabre list of rates. It was $1,000 to kill a policeman, $12,000 for a politician or judge.
My money came from Escobar's mafia, and I earned it by killing people, and also by remaining loyal to Pablo. At the time, I had at least $12 million in cash. That's worth $50 million in today's money. He was the greatest mafia boss the world's ever seen. There was no other mafia leader on earth as great as Pablo Escobar.
Like any self-respecting mafioso, Escobar built lavish homes for himself all over the country. A 3-hour drive from Medellin, the Hacienda Napoles was his stronghold. In those days, Popeye and Escobar would make their way there in a convoy. The road was dangerous.
Anyone could stop you along this road. The guerrillas, the paramilitary, the army, the police. They would stop cars, and if anyone had any money, they'd grab them and then ask the family for ransom. They called it fishing for miracles. And if they grabbed someone who was poor, they'd just kill him. We were never miraculously fished because we were heavily armed, and we had a car scouting ahead of us. There was a car every 5 kilometers and constant radio contact with people up in the mountains. If they saw anything suspicious, the boss would be informed.
At the end of the road lies the village of El Doradal. Today, next to the butcher shop, is a shop which only sells souvenirs of Escobar. Outside the village, the drug lord had built his own dream home, a hacienda fit for a tyrant, surrounded by an enormous zoo. The famous entrance is still standing. Legend has it that this is where Escobar had mounted the small plane he used to fly cocaine into the United States for the first time.
This is the Hacienda Napoles. All this was part of the hacienda. It was huge. It was about 60,000 hectares, with rivers, mountains, forests. It was nuts. Like paradise. But everything's gone now. The hacienda's gone. The boss used to like to jet ski in the lake. We'd go out for long rides, 6 or 7 kilometers, on the grounds in the afternoons. There were paths everywhere. It's all gone now. There used to be 15,000 animals here, and helicopters that would land day and night, and airplanes.
Escobar had wild animals shipped in by cargo plane. It cost a fortune. Popeye spent many days here with Escobar's other lieutenants. The zoo was not just here for the tourists. There was an ulterior motive.
In fact, the zoo was built to hide the airstrip. When the authorities wanted to know why there was a runway, we'd say it was for the zoo. All the cocaine for the United States would be flown out of here. They'd take off fully loaded with the cocaine and fly straight to the U.S., where we had landing strips. We painted the Costa Rican flag on the planes. Everyone knew it was happening, but everyone was earning lots of money. The aviation authorities would be bribed, the traffic controllers too. Radar in those days wasn't very sophisticated. If you flew low, skimming the treetops, they couldn't detect you, so it was no problem. Each plane could carry 600 to 700 kilos of coke. It was a lot in those days. 1 kilo of cocaine was worth $50,000. That's when cocaine began taking off around the world. As many as 10 or 12. Pablo Escobar came along at the perfect time for drugs. He shipped so much of it, the price fell. I myself was put in charge of keeping an eye on the cocaine in Miami. I'd keep as much as 1,000 kilos for the boss there. Once I saw 60 million in cash. There was a lot of money flowing through.
Popeye witnesses firsthand the growth of an enormous empire. Within just a few years, Escobar becomes the 15th richest man on the planet. It's 1988, and he's at the height of his power when we meet him, almost by accident. We were filming a profile of Fabio Ochoa, the man wearing the hat, and one of the Medellin cartel's godfathers, when a surprise guest showed up. Remarkably, he agreed to be interviewed.
Don Pablo Escobar.
Don Pablo Escobar.
It's the only time in his life that he'll speak publicly about cocaine.
We have to realize that we're living through the cocaine period. Cocaine is invading the world. Why? Because it's a drug that's less strong, less damaging than the others. There are drug addicts because of a lack of education and discipline. It's the same with alcohol. There's no difference between someone sleeping on the sidewalk because of drink or because of drugs. Right now, it's cocaine that's considered dangerous, evil, because the Americans can't control it. Because it's the Colombians that produce it. That's the real problem.
At this point, the Americans put a $1 million bounty on the head of Pablo Escobar. Shortly after the interview, the United States forces Colombia to sign an extradition treaty. If Escobar or his lieutenants are arrested, they'd be transferred to the USA and jailed. To the head of the Medellin cartel, this was totally unacceptable.
His fight was to avoid being extradited to the U.S. He came up with the phrase, rather a tomb in Colombia than a prison cell in the United States.
Escobar organized dozens of attacks across the country. He unleashed a reign of terror.
That's when he started his war against the state. We were happy with that. The boss began killing, and we were at war. Pablo Escobar was a god. Pablo Escobar was great because he would kill. There's a saying here, if you wage war, you don't go to mass.
Bogota, 18th August, 1989. In the crowd is one of Colombia's most popular men. Luis Carlos Galán is running for president. He declared war on the drug traffickers and campaigned on a platform of extradition. Escobar has him killed in the middle of the rally in front of 7,000 people. Today, Popeye Popeye believes the murder was Escobar's biggest mistake.
Galan's death was very, very bad. Everyone thinks the 275 bombs we set off around the country was the worst thing we did. But the killing of Carlos Galan, that was serious. It was fatal. From that moment on, Colombia went backwards. Foreign investment ground to a halt, and so did tourism.
Luis Carlos Galan's successor is Cesar Gaviria. He is next on the death list. On the 27th November 1989, he was due to fly to Cali, but changed his mind at the last moment, a decision that saved his life. The Avankia flight exploded in midair, killing all 104 on board.
What caused a problem with the Avianca flight was not the 104 Colombians on board, but the 3 Americans. The boss didn't think it was a mistake. It was just a part of his war, but it caused a wave of panic in the country. So I think that was a mistake. In that whole war, that was a big mistake.
Popeye, it seems, shows some regret.
Nobody dared to tell him. Back then, I was on his side. I thought it was good. But 20 years later, people still haven't forgotten. It caused a lot of suffering.
At the time, though, there was no question of regret. Escobar's campaign of terror forces the government to cave in. They enter into a fool's bargain with Escobar. The authorities agree to end extradition of drug traffickers. And in exchange, Escobar promises to give himself up, but only under certain extraordinary conditions, to all of which the government agrees. The head of the Medellin cartel insists a special prison be built just for him and his lieutenants. He designs the building himself. He chooses his own prison guards, people he trusts. In June 1991, he enters into this special prison along with Popeye.
I know the place like the back of my hand. We forced the government to build this prison. We, Pablo, and the whole crew had the government where we wanted them. We forced them to build a luxury prison, and I was the first person to go in. We started arriving at the mountain. The prison is in a strategic location which Pablo Escobar chose very carefully. He knew if we were attacked, we could defend ourselves from here. Today, there are lots of other buildings. In 24 years, it's all changed. That used to be just a dirt track.
Buenos días. ¿Cómo están? Bien, bien. Estoy arreglando en la casa Pablo Escobar, ¿no?
Buscando la guaca.
La guaca. Te encontré la guaca, que es joven y tiene salud. No, la guaca, ahí empezó la guaca. No, ahí está, ahí está. Vea, la mayor guaca de la salud que tenemos. Puedes venir hasta acá, vea. Gracias, parcero. Bien.
That was the boss's cell over there. And mine was right behind it. That's where the boss was photographed, behind bars, at the Cathedral.
The prison at Cathedral is soon christened Hotel Escobar. Inside, the drug business continues. And when there's no business, they have fun.
One day we had a fancy dress party. El Patron had some female costumes delivered, and I wore one. It didn't bother me at all. Later people said we got dressed as women so we could have sex with each other, but there was no need because the boss always had a constant flow of women on tap. It was just a bit of fun. They found a suitcase with penises with 2 heads. It was so the girls could play at being lesbians. It happens in the mafia. The boss even had a dog that would make love to the girls. That seemed quite normal in our business. I spent 13 and a half months in prison with him. And we did everything he wanted. I killed people, and I ran the place. We worked just for him. I was a good employee. I was very loyal.
Escobar orders his good employee to kill 2 close associates suspected of stealing from him.
We cut them into pieces and burned them. We had to do it in the prison because outside they could have bribed their way out. They had millions. They were too rich.
The murders are too much for the government, and there's an enormous scandal. The decision is made to transfer Escobar and his men to a real prison. The army surrounds the Cathedral, but the cartel boss had been expecting such a move.
Pablo Escobar had always intended to escape from the prison. It had always been in the back of his mind. So he had the escape already planned out. That's why he had the prison built the way it was, to escape from it. There was a 10,000-volt electrified wire fence that ran around the place. In the boss's cell, there was a switch which could turn the current off. There was a small wall that the wire ran along, and in one part of the wall, some of the bricks hadn't been cemented, but just covered with plaster. We knew where it was. I kicked the bricks, and that's how we got out. Then we climbed up about 500 meters. The army's searchlights were trying to spot us. When we came down the mountain, it was about 11 in the morning, and that's when the mist starts to come down. You can't see anything for 20 meters in front of your nose. The soldiers and the Americans didn't know the area, so they got lost. They had a really hard time moving around with all their equipment. You had to hack out a path, and they couldn't. They were too heavily equipped. The soldiers were kitted out like Rambos, with knives, rifles, big guns, and smaller, complicated ones. We were just bandits, so we could move easily.
Escobar and Popeye disappear, and the authorities were made to look like fools. A nationwide manhunt is launched. A special unit called the Search Block is created, made up of 2,000 incorruptible policemen and soldiers, backed up by the Americans and the DEA. The army seizes Escobar's stronghold, the infamous Hacienda Napoles. Throughout Colombia, the houses of cartel chiefs are searched. The sicarios, the hired killers, are arrested or killed. Meanwhile, as the hunt continues across the country, both Escobar and Popeye have hunkered down in Medellin. They know the best place to hide is in a city.
We began living underground, like we'd done before. We moved from hideaway to hideaway. We disguised ourselves. He had a hat, and I had a wig. See?
Popeye and Escobar move about unrecognized on the streets. One day, they almost bump into a police patrol.
The spot where Escobar came face-to-face with the police is now quite famous. The bank has always been here, and the parking over here. 6 policemen were coming from that direction. And there was the boss and myself, and we had killed so many policemen. Anyway, we went into the parking, and the policemen went by without even looking. If they'd recognized us, there would have been a gunfight. Pablo narrowly escaped being killed here.
There's a $3 million bounty on Escobar. On Popeye, too, top of the list.
Then the time came when the boss no longer wanted me around because I was too visible. The Cali cartel, the DEA, the search block, the paramilitaries, everyone was looking for me because they knew I'd be with the boss. I used to make the boss laugh because I'd joke and say, they're looking for Escobar, but who they really want is me. One day he said, you have to give yourself up. I gave him a high five, said, all right, boss, and I surrendered. I know myself very well. I love the adrenaline rush. I love the world of crime, the blood. So it was a radical decision for me to cut the umbilical cord. And the only way to cut my ties with the mafia was to become an informer.
Popeye turns informer in exchange for a shorter prison term. He provides evidence against several members of the Medellin cartel. He's sentenced to 30 years in prison. Some of Escobar's closest henchmen decide to save their own skins and surrender and become informers. Also part of the deal, the former mafiosi have to go back to school in a prison classroom with a teacher and a blackboard. The unruly pupils sitting at their desks are some of the country's most notorious gangsters. There's Popeye and the cartel's chief accountant, Roberto, Escobar's brother. Roberto takes advantage of the presence of journalists to complain about conditions.
Que nos dejen abrir la puerta de la cocina y no necesitamos más. No, son peticiones de nosotros que estamos detenidos aquí. Mi hermano puede estar montando a caballo o en una piscina bañándose o en una finca. Pues los detenidos somos nosotros, entonces nosotros no podemos pedir para él, sino para nosotros.
A few months later, during a full search, prison guards uncover a transmitter in Popeye's cell. They are convinced he's still in touch with Escobar. One morning, soon afterwards, Popeye is transferred to a high-security facility in Bogota. La Modelo, one of the worst penitentiaries of them all. At the time, we had been given exclusive access to film inside. La Modelo is high security in name only. It's filled with vicious people and extremely dangerous. The prison is not run by guards, but by armed gangs. On one side, there are extreme right-wing guerrillas, the so-called paramilitaries. And on the other, the FARC, extreme left-wing guerrillas. Caught in the middle is Popeye.
La Modelo was the most dangerous place I'd been. I was wounded there. They tried to poison me, but I fought back. As soon as you woke up in the morning, you already had to fight in order to survive. You slept for 3 or 4 hours at night, and you had to be alert the whole time. La Modelo stank of death. I was always being attacked. There were some of the most brutal fights I'd ever seen. There were rifles, machine guns, grenades, bombs. Of the 6,000 prisoners, 1,500 were armed.
¿Ya la has utilizado?
There were some tunnels at La Modelo, and some people were able to escape. We didn't need a tunnel. We had so much adrenaline and so much money invested in the prison that it was in our interest to stay inside. In prison, there was also hostage-taking. You'd be taken hostage and your family was contacted, and if no one paid up, you'd be chopped into bits. La Modelo was a house of horror. Heads were cut off, hands. We would try to find the people who'd been cut into pieces, but they just disappeared. First, they would slash the jugular and flush the blood down the toilet, and then they'd cut off the head. The hands and the torso and the rest they threw in the garbage. Nobody touched the garbage in the prison.
On the 2nd December, 1993, Popeye learns that Pablo Escobar has been shot and killed by the search block in the center of Medellin.
I was in prison and I saw the news on television. The prison went nuts. The whole world went nuts when Pablo Escobar was killed. At the American Embassy in Bogota, they cracked open champagne. Me, I watched the television and my soul was crying. Physically, I didn't shed any tears because I'm tough. I felt I'd been a coward to leave him. I was afraid. I held my head in my hands and I said to myself, Popeye, you gotta get out of here alive. And that very night, they tried to kill me. But I was happy to be at war. Now it was a different kind of war. And I defended myself, me against everyone.
In fact, there was a pitched battle a short time later at La Modelo. An armed gang attacked the high-security wing to kill Popeye. Another gang defended it. The gunfight lasted 12 hours. The guards counted 25 bodies.
How did I survive the war in La Modelo? By making alliances. I'm very sociable. I had a lot of money, and I respect discipline. Mainly, I paid well.
Popeye says he spent all his money to survive his time in prison. He claims of the $12 million he had earned with Escobar, nothing is left.
I'm not interested in money anymore. I have no money, no apartment, not even any jewels. My t-shirt just cost $1. These jeans are cheap. My sneakers are cheap. Even my socks. Look, they're too small. Nope, my riches are my freedom and my health. I'm alive. That's my greatest treasure. Look how much I've got on me. I don't need to kill anyone to buy an ice cream. I've got less than $500 on me. And here, that's a lot of money. I can eat, stay in a hotel if I have to. If I think I'm being followed, I leave my car and I take a bus. I don't have any kids, and I'm not married. I like to be on my own. I don't have bodyguards. I don't even trust my own shadow because it abandons me at night. I don't trust dogs. If they knew about money, they'd screw their own masters to buy sausages.
Popeye will tell anyone willing to listen that he's a reformed character, that he saw the error of his ways in prison. "15 years earlier, at about the halfway point of his 30-year sentence, the prison authorities offered him the chance to join a rehabilitation program.
One day, the cell door opened. Then a woman arrived, a psychologist wearing a uniform. Quite sexy, quite beautiful, actually. She said, Popeye, I'm here on behalf of the state. I'm a psychologist, and everything you tell me will remain private. I worked with her for 8 years. I gradually learned to appreciate some values. And the first was the value of life. And the next was to forget about ambition. There's a devil and an angel in my head. When I was fighting the war, the devil was huge and the angel was tiny. When I started to repent, the angel grew and the devil became very small. Small, but he's a stubborn bastard. He gives me bad advice. But my little angel says to me, no, don't listen to that bastard. Anything can happen. Like someone upsetting me, for example, and I think about crushing this son of a bitch. And the devil says to me, do it. But my little angel says, remember, you're out on bail, and there are cameras. Freedom is wonderful, so be careful. I struggle because there's good and evil in everyone. God gave us free will to choose good or evil. I can't tell you under the law.
In Colombia, the statute of limitations for murder is 15 years. Has Popeye really repented as he claims? That's the question. From his time with Escobar, he retains an attraction for weapons and a slight weakness for bad company. It's something that came up on a visit to one of Medellin's more troubled districts, known locally as Las Comunas.
This is San Salvador. It's a working class area. And many from here were able to live better lives by working for the boss. Hello, it's the bad boys. No, don't film them.
The welcoming committee for Popeye is clearly the local bosses.
¿Dónde está la monstruo? Ah, está chingada. ¿Qué más monstruo? Ah, güey, puta, ¿y se murió el pez?
No, ahí están, no que lo va a seguir para acá.
¿Tiene marihuana? Ah, se dañó el mueble. Ah, pues esta caleta está buena. ¿Y quién es esta caleta? Ah, no filmes todavía, por favor.
Bueno, tranquilo.
¿Ah?
In their company, Popeye behaves a little like a godfather.
¿Esto por qué se cierra?
For
safety.
Que no se meta gente de otros lugares.
Este otro barrio no se mete, ¿no?
No, nobody comes here. And nobody steals from each other here. No, it's to delay the police if they come here on a raid.
Para una incursión de la policía.
¿Y sin ti podríamos entrar así de fácil en este barrio, sin estar contigo?
It's better I'm here.
Mucho mejor.
Mucho mejor.
A lot better.
Y a ti te respeto.
A mí me tienen cariño.
They like me. They respect me because I know most of them from prison. When I come through here, they help me out. They spoil me. I'm safe here. I'm safer here than in the middle of the city.
Permiso, hasta luego. Hasta luego, linda.
Ties to the criminal underworld almost landed Popeye back in prison recently. In December 2017, the Colombian police went after one of the country's most wanted drug traffickers. Popeye was one of the guests at his birthday party. He can be seen in this police video. He was arrested, then released. 2 months later, Colombian legal authorities seized all of Popeye's and his family's assets, worth around $2 million, according to officials. On Twitter, Popeye stated, "Lock me up or kill me. I don't care."